Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those of you in the audience with us tonight, and we're glad to have those of you at home that are watching on television. At this time, I'm going to ask you to please stand as we have Miss Angie Fairchild, our special education supervisor, to lead us in our pledge, followed then by a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now our moment of silence. Thank you. All right, members of the board, you have seen a copy of the agenda. I'd like to have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as printed.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. We have a second. Thank you, Mr. Settles. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Communication, Ms. Trail.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Good evening.
A few communication items for you tonight. First, we'll start with just some kind of back to from the past school year. So Mitchell Nielsen's would like to thank Parks Realty for their generous support of the school. Specifically, they provided prizes for all 7 grade levels in their annual essay contest. As you know, I talk about Bob Parks and Mitchell Nielsen all the time. They're a great supporter of that school. They also provided staff with breakfast the last day of school. Additionally, Mitchell Nielsen would like to thank First Baptist Castle Street for providing field day snacks for teachers and staff. So we could not survive without our community partners. A few extra announcements that aren't on your list. The City Schools Foundation did meet last week, and they are doing the Back to School Dash. It is tentatively set for September 18th. So if you could go ahead and mark that on your calendars, we would love for you to be out there with us. Whether you volunteer or you run, we do not care. We just like to see you. We are currently filming the 4th edition or episode of Take 20. I know several of you have already watched the first 3. We are so thrilled with how that is coming out and with the positive feedback that we're receiving. We want to take time to thank City TV and especially John Padgett for the amount of work and time and energy that's going into those Take 20 episodes. And like I said, they are being received very, very nicely, so we appreciate that, and that we will continue on. Lastly, we did launch our new websites 2 weeks ago for all of our city schools as well as our ESP. I can't go on without saying thank you to Kevin Jones. He is our webmaster. Kevin spearheaded this and launched them on time. Tori Carr was right beside of him doing all of the other work that he needed to have done, so we appreciate that. And I did want to show them to you really quick, if I can go to the screen, and I'm going to let John do that. So as you look at these are meant to be mobile friendly because we realize most people look at the websites on their mobile phone or tablet. All of the schools will have the same template, so whether you go to Discovery School or Black Fox or John Pittard, you're going to see very similar look. With their own school colors. They have very easy tabs for parents to navigate, and these will change a little bit based on school on what they really thought was where their parents are going. And then the upcoming events, which you see right there, and then our news. Oops, that's a very tricky mouse I'm working with. So our news updates. And again, like we do with all of our websites, it is translatable, and it does meet the ADA compliance, which we're so excited about. You can drop down on any of the websites, and you see that this one is Black Fox. Cason Lane's going to look a little different, but again, as a parent, if you have a child in 2 schools, you're going to be able to find the same information. We're going to be able to push out the same information. So we are thrilled. This was on our list to get done this year. It was accomplished. So with those 2 things, that's the end of my communication, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. Next item on the agenda, public comment, and I'll turn this over to Dr. Duke.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we have one citizen who has formally requested to speak before the board by submitting the required board meeting visitor form. As a reminder, individuals are allotted 3 minutes to address the board. Tonight's public comment request was made by Mr. Michael Dewey. So Mr. Michael Dewey, you're welcome to join us at the podium at this time. Mrs. Van Cleef will start your time as soon as you provide us with your home address.
All right, give me a second. All right. Home address is 4920 Heroes Lane, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, 37129. Good evening. Over the past year and a half, we've been given more and more information about masks and the COVID virus, being told to follow the science. I come today with data and real science that masks are ineffective. Even if they were, our children shouldn't be shackled to them, since children have such a low risk and of symptoms and furthermore of dying. Let's follow the science. Recently, Dr. Fauci, who's more closely tied to fiction than science, has had some of his emails released to the world. He mentioned that typical masks you buy from the drugstore are not really effective in keeping out the virus, being small enough to pass through the material. From the New England Journal of Medicine, a mask alone will reduce the risk slightly. And it serves as a symbolic role, and that fear and anxiety should be addressed with data and education versus a marginally beneficial mask. From the University of Louisville, their findings do not support that COVID transmission rates decreased with greater mask use, and masks may promote social cohesion as rallying symbols, meaning it's all theater. Dr. Vane Shellbaum, a clinician at the Palo Alto VA, published a study that masks are ineffective to block COVID due to their differences in size between the COVID masks and the thread in the masks. The virus is 1,000 times smaller, making so much sense as a chain link fence, putting up a chain link fence to keep out mosquitoes. These images and reputable sources show the size of the coronavirus and the uselessness of the surgical mask that I have in front of you. So let's turn our focus onto the negative side effects that are also scientifically proven. According to the University of Louisville study and Dr. Vane Shellbaum, it promotes pH levels to be thrown off. It encourages dehydration, bacterial infection risks, interference with social learning. It increases sweating and headaches, distorted verbal speech, removes visual clues, substantial adverse psychological and physiological effects. There's shortness of breath, fear, stress, rise in hormones, fatigue, decline in cognitive performance, anxiety, depression, and many others. My request today is not for only consideration of the 2021 school year, but also the second half of the summer school program. You may be thinking we already voted on that, which is true, but you also have the ability to vote on it today with all of this information. I think you'll agree that it also needs to be on the table today. Furthermore, the true issue at hand is, why is the school board even voting on how I and other parents should care for our children's health? Is Murfreesboro School willing to pay for my child's health care bills, take them to doctor visits, ensure every health care need is met? If so, then you could have a vote in how I choose to care for my child. Fortunately, the school is not in the business of my child's health care. As we know, the nurse's responsibility is very limited, and further proves my point that the school system... May I have 30 more seconds? A board member can allow that from whatever.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, sir. As we know, the nurse's responsibility is very limited, and this further proves my point that the school system should focus its efforts on ensuring our child's education needs are met, not if masks should or should not be worn. I ask you today to take the mask mandate off our children across the board, including the bus riders. Let parents make the choice if they want their children to wear masks or not. It's a simple decision, and I hope you will be bold enough this time to make the right one. Thank you, board.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir?
Did you email us the information that you just, could you email it?
Yes, sir.
Because I'd like the copies of those.
Yes, sir. And
If those are the only ones you have, I'll take them.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Questions? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda, Spotlight on Education Summer Learning.
Yes, sir. Tonight for our Spotlight on Education, we are spotlighting our summer learning camps. As you guys are aware, we are almost halfway through our summer school program, and I wanted to take a minute tonight to celebrate the great work that's being done. We have received tremendous feedback around the environment in the summer school, about the class sizes, around the curriculum being used, just overall what a great experience it's been in summer school this year for our students. So I wanted Ms. Arnett and her team to give a quick peek into summer school so you could see what we get to see on a daily basis.
Thank you, Dr. Duke. Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Thanks for allowing us to share with you the wonderful things that are going on with summer school. It is hard to believe that tomorrow marks the halfway point of summer school. Tomorrow is day 16. Summer school has definitely exceeded the expectations. Our average daily attendance is anywhere between 1,300 and 1,500 students. So it has just been amazing. Ms. Daugherty could not be with us tonight, so I'm pinch hitting for her to talk a little bit about the reading block, and then Ms. Klisch is going to come up and speak to you a little bit about the math block. As Mr. Duke said, it has just been amazing. The feedback has been tremendous. Today I just happened to be on Salem Highway around lunchtime, and those buses were pulling out, and I'm telling you, that is something to see. It just makes you proud knowing that that number of buses is coming out to get our students from the summer school program. But I want to talk to you just a second about when thinking about our reading block. We looked at this with 2 buckets. And when we think about our K2 students, that bucket was foundational skills. And what that might look like in a classroom were letters being formed in magic sand, decodables were being used, and students were doing all kinds of word sorts. There was a lab focus where students were creating, they're engineering, they're researching, and they're imagining, and most importantly, they are writing in those journals, and it is definitely something to see. When we think about the bucket for 3 through 6, we think about kids in text, and they're reading with the support of our EL curriculum. Grade levels in third grade, for instance, had a theme of wolves, so they've done things around wolves. 4th grade was simple machines, and we focused on both fiction and nonfiction books. But one of the most exciting things has definitely been the Legos for grades 3 through 6, where they are sketching, they are creating, and they're even having some competitions with those Legos. But again, one of the most important things that students are doing, they are writing again. So when we were thinking about the summer school curriculum, we wanted to truly focus on engagement, both for students and for teachers. And I can tell you, I think we have accomplished that because teachers are loving it and students are loving it. So I'm gonna let Ms. Klisch talk a little bit about math.
Imagine that. And you know it took a lot.
I know that they had to twist your arm for
No, she already
that.
told me I have 60 seconds at the time. Okay. And as we think about it, I want to just give credit to Sherry a little bit because she really, at this time last year, she had that vision. She met with the team and she said, I want summer school next year for our kids. And so we really had that head start. And for math, I was able to form just a small committee of teachers, coaches, and the math specialists from the mid-core office. And we were able to say, what do we want in math for our students coming up? And one of the goals that we set is we didn't want it to look like the school year. You know, if it's a learning camp, if it's summertime, it has to be fun, it has to be engaging. I want them to come back the next day and say, I want to do math, right? So that was our top goal. But at the same time, we hear it from teachers, they want support with fluency. So fluency had to be that focus this summer, along with rigor. There had to be some rigor to it because, again, the whole goal was to really have our students just filling some gaps and making sure they're ready and they're going in next year really, really strong. So we looked at several curriculums, and the committee was unanimous, Math for Love, and you love the title. I mean, it's awesome because their goals clearly aligned with the district. their goals. They talk about Dan Finkel and Catherine Cook are the author. Dan has worked with Murfreesboro City Schools to adjust, adapt, add to, take from what we've needed. But his two principles are rigor and fun. And that's it. The kids are playing with mathematics. And his statement is, books is to reading like play is to math. And so we really have been deep in the math this year. So thinking about a classroom, you walk in, you're going to hear a buzz in math. You're going to hear it because the kids are talking it. They're playing the games. They're really digging deep into the activities. And the part that I think really speaks strongly is there's multiple solutions. So the children will be talking, well, I solved it this way. Well, I solved it this way. There's sometimes even multiple answers where they're coming up with. And they are deeply engaged with the math. They are thinking deeply, and they have the time to do that. So what we're wanting to do now is to kind of show you a video of what math and ELA look, just a little short glimpse in the classroom.
Well, I don't know. Let's see how this goes.
Love Legos and
Learners. Did you have any that 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20.
I am making a bird helper, and I'm gluing it down and putting the little straps on the bird body.
So tell me, how do you like this? How do you like summer school?
I like it really good because I get to see my old teacher that I used to be in my class.
So I got a 10. So I showed up over a 0. Or I got a 0, that means you keep it and try another 10. And then we're going to get it right to make 10. That means flip it back over. You know, there, make some design on it. Maybe a little. That was a stop.
Everyone to listen to those sounds in the bed. Put those up on your board. Okay, I'm going to do mine. We're going to see how we did. What's the first sound that you hear? M. Okay. All right. Net. What is the second sound that you hear? E. What sound does E make?
So what I've noticed this summer mostly about this curriculum is that it reinforces a lot of the skills that we've learned throughout the school year. You know, just even in a game as simple as I guess my number, we talk about being able to ask questions and them asking me things about evens and odds. Is it greater than or less than a certain number? And that game also even carries over into other areas, things that we do. You know, in our in ELA, we talk about following directions. We talk about the listening because we have that portion of our T and Ready, and they have to be able to listen to what other students have guessed and be able to comprehend that, which I think also strengthens that area. The students love it. They love all the games. They ask to play them. They have all their favorites that they ask to play over and over. I've really enjoyed it, and I think they've really enjoyed it as well.
And just to follow up from Mr. Shelton, to give you a couple of quotes from our teachers. You know you've reached a whole new level of success when you open the room up for indoor recess and they ask if they can play prime climb, bagels game, or pennies, nickels, and dimes. I absolutely love the activities we are doing with these kids this summer. Thank you for all you do for making and teaching and learning math so much fun. That was from John Pittard. This one, I had to force my kids out to recess because they were so engaged in the learning. Now they're out here identifying all the simple machines. Fourth grade classroom from Scales. And then here are our labs in ELA. There you can see the students writing. Tortoises have a shell. And then that's also part of the labs for kindergarten, where they have studied trees, and then they have created and designed and have written about those. And then finally, here is another lab in ELA. When we finished the wolves in sheep's clothing today, after deep discussion, the students used evidence and details from the text to create Instagram pages through Google Classroom slides that represent the wolf and shepherd based on their action and motivations in the story. Their reasoning behind the images they selected were amazing. And so that is our presentation on summer school.
Beautiful.
Thank you again for all of your support during this time, and we just couldn't be more thrilled. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much. Wonderful report. Board comments,
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry.
somebody down here, I think, Mr. Richardson? No, I'm sorry.
Usually, but no.
Mr. Ballard already had his hand up.
All right, yeah, this is perfect timing because I sent Dr. Duke an email from a tour I took of John Pittard in Northfield Elementary yesterday with Sherry. And I'll just read it to you because I'll mess it up if I don't read word for word here. I had a great tour, hi Trey, I had a great tour of JPE and NE summer schools in action this morning. I can say that I was very impressed with the classroom activities, the teachers, and the EA enthusiasm and the engagement of the students. Both schools were happy places of learning. And my takeaway points were, and I tried to condense them, but takeaway just walking through was classroom pupil and teacher ratios matter tremendously. And I think that's not news to anyone. But when we see it in action, when you see 4 or 5 students working with a teacher or an EA and realize, you know, the maximum we were going to have was maybe 13. And the impact that carries, just the face time and the individual time that the teacher can give, you could just see it. And the summer curriculum is working as well. And the teachers that I spoke with all love it. So we're on the right track there. And then, of course, just something, this gives us something to build on for the rest of the planning for next year's summer school. We've got a good start. And I will say the Lego things were just amazing, and how those children were working on the Lego and using that for math solving. And then, of course, I didn't mention the nutrition. They're getting their meals, they're getting, and they're fed, they're happy, and they're engaged, and it's great. So good job, Dr. Duke, with all of the facilitators to make that happen.
Mr. Sutton?
Thank you. I have a question, but it's probably for Sarah Walker. Thank you. Do we have nurses at these schools during the summer school?
Not at every one, but we do have 3 in 3 locations.
Kind of rotating?
Well, there's every day we have one at John Pittard, Northfield, and Black Fox, and then they are on call for another location. So,
okay.
Yes.
So my question is, have we noticed an uptick in visits to the nurses' office or station during summer school?
Not at all.
There's not been a whole lot of extra visits?
Sick kids, but not.
The regular amount?
Yes, I'd probably even say less than that.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Ballard?
That brought up a question for me. SROs. Do we have SROs at the schools?
We do have SROs at all of our summer school sites.
Okay, good. I didn't remember a conversation, but I assumed we did.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Thank you very much. Very good report, ladies. Appreciate it. And certainly a job well done that is being done, and I'm sure is going to continue on for the second half. All right, we have a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Have a second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Goff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right, action items. Board Policy 1.407.
Yes, sir. We are recommending the approval of the revised policy 1.407. This policy details our public records policy. The policy revision is being made to align our policy with the TSBA recommended policy and ensure it complies with the Comptroller's Office. Although the revision is a rewriting of the policy, there are no major changes to the policy itself.
Okay, thank you. Have a motion to approve Policy 1.407.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Any question, comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Policy 5.201.
Yes, sir. We are recommending the revision to Policy 5.201 regarding the separation practices for non-tenured teachers. This amendment addresses new legislation that was passed during the last Tennessee General Assembly. The revised policy clarifies the method and time in which non-certified personnel should receive a notice of renewal and ensures our policy is in line with the new law.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Motion made to approve. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Any question or comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Policy 5, I'm sorry, my glasses are fogging up here. 6.3131.
Yes, sir. The revision to Policy 6.3131 is regarding our school-wide positive behavior program. Specifically, in this policy, we are just looking to remove the specific bullying program name that was mentioned in the current policy and replace it with a more generic term as to not mention a specific program in our policy.
That is in line 73, correct?
That is correct.
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Thank you, Ms. Goff. We have a second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Any question, comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Differentiated pay plan?
Yes, sir. Each year we submit a differentiated pay plan to the state of Tennessee, and we choose to give a signing bonus to hard-to-fill positions. Some years we've had ESL, special education. Last year and this year, we are going to give a $2,000 signing bonus to sixth grade teachers. Newly hired sixth grade teachers are teachers who transfer to sixth grade. It's becoming more and more difficult to find good sixth grade teachers. So we recommend approval of this Murfreesboro City Schools differentiated pay plan for the year 2021 and 22.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Have a second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Question, what about our sixth grade enrollment?
It's about,
Is it fluctuating at all much, you think?
we usually keep about 50% of our fifth grade students as sixth graders.
Okay. And we're looking for the same thing in the fall, do you think?
Yes, sir, we hope.
All right, you had a motion and a second to approve the pay plan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you.
COVID protocols?
Yes, thank you. So we're going to take some time tonight and look at our proposed COVID return to school plan for the 21-22 school year. So I have just a few slides to go through, kind of similar to what we did at the summer school presentation, so it should be on your screen as well. And then I'll be happy to take questions. So as you are aware, your original return to school plan was approved last July, and then in May we did the summer school procedures, and we've used this as kind of an ongoing document. We are continuously updating this as needed. So this would really be the next iteration of that to make sure that we're in line and plan for how we'll start as a school system. I want to start by just showing some data to you similar to what I showed last time. The graph in front of you goes back to September and gives the number of cases. We have had both staff positive and student positive cases in our district going back all the way to February. As you can see, there's been a decrease, and we were very excited. Toward the end of May, that last week in May, we actually had no staff or student positive cases. Since the beginning of summer school, we've had 0 staff positive. We have had 1 student positive case. Fortunately for us, that positive student was already at home, so it did not result in any quarantine. So I'm very excited to say through the first 3 weeks of summer school, we have no quarantines that we've had to do. And we continue to see those numbers go down. This graph also is one I shared with you last time, which is the percent of our county that currently has positive cases. I want to clarify, this is not Murfreesboro City. This is Rutherford County as a whole. So as you can see, back in January, we were as high as 0.98% of the population with positive cases. That number has gone down. The last number I gave you in May, before we started summer school, we were at 0.087. Last Friday, we were at 0.031. And then I checked again today, and today we are sitting at 0.027% of the county with positive cases. So when you think about that, I shared this graph with you as well last time, and the CDC uses this graph to indicate the transmission level in the county, and this is from the CDC's website. They measure it in 2 ways. The first is the number of positive cases over the past 7 days for every 100,000 people. Currently in Rutherford County, based on this data, which ended last Friday, that number was at 31. That number does put us, according to the CDC's graph, in the moderate transmission area. They also look at the percentage of tests that are coming back positive. And in Rutherford County, that percentage is at 2.54, which puts us in the low transmission area for there. So the way the CDC actually qualifies us, though, is based on that higher one. So we are at currently listed as moderate transmission for Rutherford County. So with that information in mind, we'll kind of jump into the plan. Before I go into this, I want to say thank you to a couple people. Ms. Walker and Darla Sampson, our school nurse supervisor, and our coordinated school health supervisor have just been invaluable resources as we've continued not just this plan, but through last year. So publicly, I want to thank them. And then, of course, LaShann Dixon with the Rutherford County Health Department. When we talk about community partners, she's definitely one of the best. She is always willing to answer our calls. She has great conversations with us, and so we appreciate her as well. So as we sat down to think about the COVID plan, there were kind of 2 goals that we had in mind. The first is to continue to move to a more normal school environment. We always want to make sure as we continue to go through COVID, knowing we know so much more now than we did a year ago, that are we taking steps to move back to a more normal schooling environment while making sure the safety precautions are in place that we need to have in place. Another goal for us is going into next year is really the idea about minimizing whole class quarantines. We want to do everything we can to make sure that if we have positive cases, we're not having to send home an entire grade level. Now, we're prepared if that happens. We have our quarantine teachers we've hired for next year, and the chances are we may have to do it. But to the greatest extent possible, how do we move to that more normal without having to keep our students in their classrooms all day? And that's really what we thought about. We know we mentioned last time the CDC has said they're going to be releasing additional guidance. To date, they have not. And Ms. Walker checked again today, and there's no new information out there from the CDC. Now, one of the things I'll point out is we start school much earlier than many places around the country. So I would hope that the CDC guidance would come out before we start. They haven't released a date, but I could see a situation where we actually start before that new guidance is released. But when we get it, we'll know. So as we think about this, I want to first kind of quickly go through What are items that we have changed for summer school that will stay the same for next year? One is our quarantine guidelines based on vaccination status. So specifically for our employees, if they're fully quarantined, they will not have, fully vaccinated, they will not have to quarantine if they have that vaccination in place. Our transportation protocols will continue to be in place, meaning we'll do seating assignments on the bus, regular cleaning and sanitizing, so that if there was a positive case on the bus, we would know exactly who was sitting around that child. But we will be encouraging parents, if they have the capabilities, to continue to bring their children next year. And we talked a lot about this, and my main reason for wanting to move in this direction and saying we absolutely are going to provide bus transportation, and if you need bus transportation, we will absolutely provide that, as always. But if it's possible for you to bring them, that may be a chance for you to avoid a potential quarantine, right? If you're sitting next to a student on the bus, we would have to quarantine around them, so that may be something parents want to keep in mind. And finally, as far as testing requirements on who we require to be tested once they show signs of illness, we will once again use this same chart we've been using in summer school. And this has really helped us kind of streamline what they have laid out as, and I know it's very hard to see, and I apologize, but I'll give you a quick estimate or a quick overview. The health department in Tennessee has divided it into what they call major symptoms and minor symptoms. And now what we're saying is, depending on your level of exposure and what your symptoms are, it may not mean that you have to leave school and get tested, where last year that was our protocol. So this year we're being a little more looking at this, knowing there's new information and saying, these symptoms, you need to go get a test before you come back to school. But if you have these milder symptoms, even though last year that may have sent you home, this year you'll be able to return to school. So we'll be following this, and our nurses will oversee this as well. Some changes for next year compared to what we did in the previous year. First is around school visitors. So we are going to, last year we allowed no visitors into our building, and we know that our schools and our families are anxious to get back in. So we are going to be limiting the number of visitors, and it's really going to be based on school and classroom capabilities. So what we're asking is that all of our visitors will need to be pre-scheduled and pre-approved with administrative discretion, meaning we're going to really let the principals make that decision based on the need to have that parent in the building if it's in there, and understanding we want to make sure there's not a situation where a classroom has 10 or 12 parents in there. We still want to be mindful of that. So we're kind of moving in that direction. We are going to say no visitors allowed during lunch breaks again. One, that is where we typically get the most visitors, and we'll talk more about lunch in just a second. We will continue to use Zoom for our parent meetings, and that's really not so much a COVID issue as much as a convenience issue for the parents as well. That now we are very ready to be able to meet with parents where they don't have to take a half day off work, right? They can Zoom in from their office on their lunch break. So we'll continue that practice as well. Any questions so far? I want to keep railroading. All right. Let's talk about school nutrition then. We will continue to serve breakfast in the classroom each day, and we will continue for breakfast and lunch to use the portable containers that we purchased last year. They have held up very well, and we'll continue to use those. We are going to make a movement to begin using our cafeterias again. Again, last year we had no students in the cafeterias, they ate in the classroom. So what our plan is to start the year with lunches being at 50% capacity. Most of our cafeterias hold somewhere between 300 and 370 students in there. So this will be us moving large numbers of kids into one area. They're eating during that time, lots of talking. If you've been in a school cafeteria before, it's not the quietest place in the world, but it's a fun place. So we're going to start the year asking principals to have their cafeterias at 50% capacity, and the students not eating in the cafeteria will be eating in their classrooms. And principals are going to have discretion on that lunch schedule based on their building needs. And we've talked this through with the principals, and really we've kind of said, you know your building. You know where kindergarten is placed in your building, where it may be different in another building. So letting those principals decide, is it K2 in the classroom, 3-6 in the cafeteria? Is it opposite? Is it half kindergarten one day, the other half the other day? we're letting them kind of have that autonomy to choose, knowing we want to begin using our facilities, making sure we have students in there, and what works best for them. Even the students in the cafeteria, though, will continue to use those portable lunch containers just for the ease, as principals have that autonomy and may need to do some switching. Our nutrition staff can plan accordingly. We are going to begin to allow assemblies. Again, this is something we did not allow last year. We are continuing to keep that 50% capacity in the gym. So what we've talked to our principals about is, instead of thinking a school-wide assembly, you may think a grade level assembly. I'm going to have all the third grade in. That way they can stay in, the, spread out. They're not crammed together in the gym, and there's some space there. Virtual field trips we encouraged, and we're not saying for the entire year, but we are saying at least until fall break, we are going to not allow any off-campus field trips. If we're asking parents at this point to consider bringing their students, then we don't want to go and put entire grade levels on the bus ourselves. So we're going to follow that for now as we look at it. That really isn't a huge change for us because we do very little off-campus field trips the first 9 weeks of school. As far as after-school activities, again, these were very limited last year. I'm speaking specifically about what I call non-mandatory events. So that would be open houses, book fairs, fundraising events, which our schools need. A lot of their fundraising events were cut short last year, and that was some funds they didn't get. So we are going to allow those, again, with the principal working with us around social distancing, room capacity, location. All of that will be considered, and as they send those approvals in, we'll be asking those questions. So an example may be, whereas the book fair, family night, which is a great family event, may typically be in a library, the principal may decide, I'm going to move that to the gym. I can spread it out more, I can have more people, maybe extend the time as well. Any questions on any of those changes for next year? So as you see, these are the steps we're taking to kind of move back to what I would call a more normal school environment inside the building. We will, and I will say one more thing, we will be doing open houses this year. Last year we did not. Again, we're working with our principals on that with Ms. Trail regarding how they can flex those and all the principals. So historically, we have done an open house district-wide for the entire school on the evening of the day before they come back. Our principals are working on some plans to spread those out to, again, decrease the number of people inside the building at the time, to give parents that option to spread out more. But what that does do is allow our parents to get in. You have to remember, we have students going into first grade whose parents have never stepped foot in the building. And so we want to give parents that opportunity this year to get inside our building, but do it in a way that if they feel like they need more space, they have more space there as well.
Ms. Moore, I think you have a question, Dr. Duke.
Yes. I hope if I'm jumping ahead, just say you'll get to it. But I think it falls in with the school day overview. If I remember correctly, last year, special area teachers traveled to the classrooms. Is that going to change this year? Will the kids go to special area?
So we changed that last year, and Mr. Ringstaff helped me, I think, in the spring, around, it was right at February, I think. It was before I came in, but we did change that to allow them to start moving. And so that happened at the end of last year. It was successful, so we will continue that this year, where students will be going to the music room, to the gym, to the art room, and so on.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So the question then becomes, of course, about face mask and what the options are for face masks. So I'm going to present two options for face masks for your consideration tonight. The first option that we're presenting, and this is two options, of course, the board can choose to do any option or a different one if they so choose, is that for students, we would say masks are required when riding the bus. When they're not on the bus, students would be encouraged to wear a mask at any time if that best meets their situation, but they would not be mandatory in any location outside of the bus. For adults, this is the same as summer school, that they would continue to adhere to the CDC guidelines, which means if they're vaccinated, they aren't required to wear a mask. However, when in the presence of students, MCF staff members will be following whatever protocols the students are following. Option two is what we're currently doing in summer school. That is that non-vaccinated persons, which includes the majority of our students, would be required to wear a mask when inside the school, and 6 feet of social distance cannot be maintained. Mask would be optional when students are outside and when they are inside and socially distanced. However, they're encouraged to wear a mask at any time if that best meets their situation. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Ms. Shealy is here if you have questions regarding cafeteria. Ms. Sampson and Ms. Walker are both here as well if you have questions for them.
All right, Mr. Settles.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, and again, my question is actually going to be for Ms. Walker. I think she could best answer it. How long is our school day, approximately? Kids are in school for?
Seven.
Yeah. So last year we had very strenuous guidelines in place. You know, we're kind of in the height of the coronavirus, mask requirement, et cetera. My question has to do with something that was mentioned earlier, which is the health of our kids, and that is always top of my concern since I have grandkids in the system, and I love all kids. Was there a noticeable increase in visits to the nurse's office during last year? Not necessarily COVID related, but that could be, I don't know, related to having to wear that mask all day. Headaches, I don't know, breathing problems, overheating, anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That was never brought to my attention.
Okay. You'd be the only one I could ask. And I don't know if we have the supervisor of counseling tonight.
You know, Mr. Marlin is actually out. He's on
vacation.
He's on vacation this
How
week.
convenient for him. Wish I was on vacation. Then I could ask you.
Sure,
I'm going to ask you, and Mr. Ringstaff may have to chime in because last year, yeah, it was under your watch. With the mask mandate being in place for the majority of the year, well, you started it, Ralph. My question has to do with maybe the social aspect, because that was brought up as well, and I think we talked about that a little in our last meeting. Did we notice an increase to services needed because of kind of, I guess, some of the negative social impacts from this mask wearing? You know, you can't see each other's face, expressions, and things like that. Was there anything, even anecdotally, I know you wouldn't necessarily have the numbers.
No, sir. Our adults and our students adapted and adjusted very well to the situations that we had put them under, you know, the mask mandates and social distancing. We were all very proud of our students and teachers and staff, classified staff, nutrition, transportation, everybody.
Sure.
Did an excellent job.
Thank you. Did you know anything different, Dr. Duke?
Nothing was brought to my attention about that.
And Ms. Moore?
I have a question. Nurse Walker, I'm sorry, you're like
She can just stay up
up
here.
and down.
You're getting your steps in tonight.
What's important to me is what public health officials think about this. And so having seen both these options, is there one that you recommend for us?
As a healthcare professional, my recommendation would be to follow the CDC and Tennessee Department of Health's guidelines.
Which is option 2?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
All right, Mr. Richardson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Dr. Duke, these plans that you've presented tonight, they were put together for the safety and well-being of the children here at Murfreesboro City Schools as well as staff. Is that correct?
That is correct.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Under option 2, where it says non-vaccinated persons are required to wear a face mask, how will we know who's vaccinated and who's not when like I'm talking about visitors, parents that are allowed in?
So, you know, I think if you were to go with option 2, we are asking, and again, we're using the word strongly encouraging, and our teachers, of course, will model that when in a school building in the presence of students, they would follow the protocols that the students are having. We are not at this, don't have the intention of asking our principals to police that, right? Except to say, we're in the school building, if we're under option 2, then we're asking our adults to model that behavior that we're asking of our students.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Richardson?
I move that we approve COVID protocol option number 2 for the school year 2021 through 2022, as well as granting with the director the power and the authority to any extent that the policies are in conflict with any of the protocols that have been shown tonight, and those protocols would last all the way through the school year of 2022.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Have a second, Mr. Settlers?
Second.
Now, any discussion? Now's the time. Okay, Ms. Barton, then Mr. Ballard.
Very difficult decision. I would like to say that I don't know that either option is right. I have strong feelings either way. I'm going back to my gut feeling as an educator for 32 years. And I think we should go with option 1 because I think that I just feel like that it's time. I understand the CDC has not said that yet, but I also talked to a lot of teachers and they feel that way. They feel like obviously communication is suffered. So, I mean, I totally understand both sides of it, but I just have to go with that.
So are you making a motion?
No, we've already got a motion.
You're just discussing?
We have a motion. We're in the mode of discussion right now. We have not voted. Go ahead, Ms. Barton. Are you
That's
finished?
it.
Okay, Mr. Ballard?
Okay, and I made my point last week about, our last meeting about the parent choice. And as I go through these, I'm trying to find one that I haven't really heard any reason why parent choice is not the logical and smart way to go, because we're substituting our information that we think we understand and taking it away from the parents to make that decision. So anyway, someone tell me what the difference is, or why parent choice is not a choice for this going into the school year.
So option 1 would be parent choice everywhere outside of the school bus. So option 1 is just that it is encouraged to wear a mask, and so my assumption would be, because of the clientele we serve, that that encouragement is going to come from their parents of whether or not they would like them to wear one. So option would be that choice I believe you're speaking of.
So the difference between the two, okay, we're wearing masks on the school bus in both options.
That would be our recommendation.
Okay. In option 1, where students are encouraged to wear a mask at any time if that's what they want to do.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. And adults would adhere to the CDC guidelines.
Yes, sir.
Now, option 2, non-vaccinated persons, so then that would mean the majority of our students.
That's correct.
Would be required to wear a face mask when inside school or within 6 feet of other folks.
Yeah, so at that point, it would be kind of, or similar to what we did last year. In fact, it would be, and I'll turn to Elizabeth, part of our, for lack of a better word, dress code, if that would be the appropriate thing, that in those situations, we would require students to wear a mask if they were in that setting.
Okay. And then students are encouraged to wear a mask, okay. And adults should, and that's, for the adults in both options, it's the same thing. So the only difference is, in option 2, if a child is not vaccinated, they're required to wear a mask when inside school, and 6-foot distance cannot be safely maintained.
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
I have another.
All right.
I have
Ms.
another
Barton?
comment, yeah. And also, I think it's important to know that we can change this at any time. If numbers were to start changing, obviously that might be a reason to change. If the CDC comes out with a set of guidelines that fully supports one or the other, then that would be a reason to change. So what we're doing here is not engraved in stone. It's a situational decision for what the situation is right now.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. There is quite a bit of ruckus in the gallery. I'd like for that to calm down before any further discussion is had.
Thank you. I would ask people in the audience to maintain silence as much as possible. Okay, other board considerations, comments, Mr.
Mr.
Settle?
Chairman, yes. To my fellow board member that brought up the parent option, which I do see more in option one, we have a dress code, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Students are required, regardless of their parents' thinking, to abide by the dress code if they are to attend school. Also, if students don't want to ride the bus, students have the option to bring them, is that correct? I mean, parents can bring them, right? So it is not a force per se. I've heard the expression of parent choice, which is all throughout. Choice is never taken away. It's just a matter of what happens after your choice. So in that regard, all of these things that we put in place are only incumbent upon those that choose to attend or choose to ride the bus or however they would fall under that purview. In the same way that students are required, unless I'm wrong and they may have changed, MMR is still required, right? You still have to get an MMR to go to school. You don't have to get an MMR. You just cannot come to school if you don't have it. Okay, that's all.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Duke, we've discussed collateral effects, negative effects of the pandemic and the state of emergency that was issued here in Tennessee. Is that right?
Yes,
And in our last budget, we in fact have hired a new social worker. Is that right?
that is correct.
And we've continued to put in policies and procedures to handle social fallout from this year-long pandemic. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
We didn't choose for this pandemic to occur, did we?
No, sir.
This is not something we want to happen to these children. Is that right?
That is correct.
This is something we are doing carefully, thoughtfully, prayerfully, and in the student's safety and best interest. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, of course, everything we do is with the best interest of the children.
No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I feel like we're in a trial.
We're in a what?
We can be.
I feel like we're in a trial. I mean, okay.
I think to go back and we wanted to word these two options really carefully. And again, I don't think we can overstate the strong feelings that are on both sides of this. And that's something as a school system we want to continue to balance. And I think Ms. Barton kind of summed it up well. I don't know, if there's necessarily a right answer as far as how do we make the best answer for our students. And so that is the design between the two options. One, as Mr. Ballard said, that first option being really more of a parent choice option where parents would have that choice. That is what many of our school districts around us are going to. That second option would be more aligned to still having those masks in place and then requiring those masks in place. Again, knowing not necessarily if there is a 100% right answer, but what is the best answer for us to make as a team.
I've given this a lot of thought since we met last, and I made the statement at our last meeting. This board has an opportunity tonight to make a vote. It doesn't matter how we vote. We're not going to please everybody. I refereed high school basketball for 30 years, and if I blew the whistle one time, the side on the left didn't like it. Next time I blew it, the side on the right didn't like it. So that's where we are. Either way, we're not going to please everybody. But I have to think, in my vote, in my decision tonight, if I vote one way and a child or an employee, because of my vote, becomes infected or becomes sick, then I've not done anything to prevent that child or that employee from getting sick. If I vote another way, I've tried to help a little bit to change and to protect that child in particular. And I think that's what we're looking at tonight, because our children are not vaccinated. Our adults have the opportunity, and if they're not, they should be. So, I don't know, it is a tough decision either way we go, so we just need to remember that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
And I do want to go back to what Roseanne said. Neither one of these are just, this is like walking a knife's edge. I have children that are in the school system, and it concerns me. It concerned me that they had to wear a mask because I did not want them to have to wear a mask, and I knew that I had one in particular that may have some issues with breathing through a mask. So neither one of these options are optimal, but the good thing about it is that we can change course as we see more information come in, which is what I think we have done throughout this pandemic. We have not made one statement and stuck with it regardless. We have looked at the data, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and our decisions all along the way have been guided by the data. And we get, trust me, emails all the time, don't do it, whatever. But we have been guided by the data, and that has and I could be wrong, but I think that's what's gotten us to the place we are now, is that we followed the data, we followed the information that we have, and made the best decision that we could at the time. Sometimes, was it overkill? Absolutely. Absolutely. But for the same reason, when I was sick the other week, I took Theraflu, I took Dayquil, I took a Z-Pack, I did everything I could. I tried to kill this thing. So it's kind of one of those things where we're throwing everything at it that we know within reason. So I appreciate the hard work that went into drafting these plans, and I call for the question.
We have, all right, give me the procedure. I don't want to mess it up like we did last time.
I will second the call of the question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All in favor of calling for the question, say aye.
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 Any opposition? All right, the question has been called for. Are we right, Ms. Taylor?
Did Mr. Richardson, was he the second?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
All right. So we're voting then. The motion is to approve option
Number 2.
number 2. All right. And along with giving the director of schools the opportunity to make changes as need be later on. Am I correct in that, Mr. Richardson?
That is my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. Call the roll, please, ma'am.
Mr. Ballard,
Nay.
Miss Barton,
No.
Miss Goff,
Nay.
Miss Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Richardson,
Aye.
Mr. Settles,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
We have 4 yeas, 3 nays. The motion passes for option 2.
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the FY21 Literacy Training Stipend Grant. As I've mentioned in several previous meetings, we have multiple grants coming down from the state at this time, and so this is one of those. So we're recommending the approval of this Literacy Training Stipend Grant and the budget revision that accompanies it. This is a $100,000 state-funded grant that was used to provided to MCS to be used to pay teacher stipends for attendance at the 2-week Tennessee Early Literacy Training that we did earlier this summer. So although this was officially a state training, it was led by our MCS staff and aligns to the work being done. And we are recommending approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
All right, so thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Ms. Barton seconded. Any question, comment?
Comments, yay.
All right.
I mean, thank God, because teachers don't always get stipends like that. So I'm so glad that's being done. It's a big chunk of their summer to give up, and they want the information. It's just hard to give up the time, so.
Absolutely.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Next item, Dr. Duke.
Yes, sir. The next item is the approval of the FY22 ELC grant. If you'll give me just a second, I'm going to give you a quick explanation on this. This was a new grant that came to us. We were awarded $2,394,596 in state funding because we as a system have agreed next year to provide COVID testing to our employees. So as you're aware, we actually did this last year. Nurse Walker and her team were part of a pilot group that did this last year. So it made the decision to do it next year very easy for us. And so we were very excited to apply and to accept this money to continue to provide this testing and really allow us to provide the testing in more locations across our district to our employees. So as with all federal grants and state grants, there are very strict restrictions on what we can use those for. So in your package, you have the proposed spending plan, but I wanted to highlight for you guys just a few things we're looking at using this $2.3 million for. This is one-time funding, but we will be using it next year to help cover the salaries of our nurses, as well as a hazard pay stipend to them for administering the COVID test. It'll go for purchasing COVID testing supplies, PPE, medical supplies, equipment that we can use to update our nurses' clinics, technology to allow for no contact signature forms. In addition, we can also use this for school health related items. And Ms. Sampson and Ms. Walker have worked together on this, so we'll be adding some water bottle fill stations in all of our schools and providing some new health education curriculum materials that our teachers have been, PE teachers have been asking for specifically. And we're excited that the grant also allows us to budget money for some capital projects specifically around nursing clinics. So we are going to be proposing minor construction projects to address clinic needs at Mitchell-Nelson Primary, Discovery School, and Overall Creek. All of these were identified as nurses' clinics that either need to be expanded and or renovated. So these projects will improve our current nursing stations and make it more conducive to the student needs. And finally, one of the allowable expenditures, it covers parking lot resurfacing to make it easier to get to the testing site. We're excited to say we'll also be proposing that we resurface our parking lots with these funds. And I'm happy to answer any questions about this money, but we're very excited about this grant.
Mr. Chairman?
Question.
All right, Ms. Goff?
What were the three schools that we're going to be getting?
Yes,
some
so
updates?
Overall Creek, Mitchell-Nelson, and Discovery, and Nurse Walker worked with Mr. Williford on that to identify the needs of those. And I know Ms. Walker's here. She's happy she can address any questions about those specific clinics. With Overall, I know the specific issue is the size of that clinic. It is rather small. And so when you look at its sister school, which would be Salem, it has a much larger nursing clinic, and so would be expanding that. With Mitchell-Nelson Primary, it's also making that clinic larger by removing a wall, because right now they're in two separate classrooms, making it one. And then at Discovery, it's also moving them to a larger area in the building. And do you want to add to any of that, Nurse Walker?
Just Discovery School currently is in the office and is very small and doesn't have a sink or bathroom, so they are moving that. And then they are adding an outside door to Mitchell-Nelson Primary for outside access. So there's only inside access.
Well, I was just thinking maybe Overall being a newer school, maybe the older schools would benefit, but maybe there's not a need, maybe they've already been addressed.
So when we looked at it, because we can only use this money for nursing clinics, so we were trying to identify which nursing clinics need to be addressed.
Okay.
So Overall is one of those situations, is a newer school, but it's a very, very small clinic, and it makes that a little more difficult, which of course that was changed in the Salem build, and so this allows us to go and fit that.
Gotcha.
As you guys know, in your ESSER 3.0 funds, we have suggested the Reeves-Rogers addition in the front. That nursing clinic would be included in that project as well.
But the Overall was not built proportionately to the size of the school. I mean, you know, and that was, like you said, they corrected it when they built Salem, so.
Mr. Settle?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of stuff in here, and there's a lot of money being spent, but this has no impact on our current budget. Is that correct? Because this is a grant.
It is a grant, and so it will impact our current budget in the fact that it will allow us to move some expenses out of our current budget.
But not in the negative. That's what I said.
It'll
not
allow
in the
for
negative way.
Nurses' salaries,
Yes.
we'll be able to move those next year to this budget, and it will just really allow us to utilize those funds in a different way for next year.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the funds as outlined by the director.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Suttles. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Okay, 21st Century Schools?
Yes, this is a grant the board is accustomed to seeing, so this week comes up every year. It's our 21st Century grant, and this is the grant for next year. This is a grant will provide MCS with $476,000 in state funding, and it really flows through our ESP program. This is the grant money we use to provide free or nearly free care to students who need services before or after school. It also pays for some tutoring opportunities during that time and transportation home after that tutoring. The grant will serve between 400 and 500 students at our 8 Title I funded schools. It'll also include some instructional materials for those teachers, the fuel for the buses, and required professional development trainings that are part of the program.
We have a motion to approve the grant.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Goff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Budget amendments and transfers?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
We have 10 budget amendments to bring before you tonight. The first 3 are for the grants that you just approved. So these are state, they're in the process of being state approved. They've gone through partial review, and we hope to have full review before the end of the week. So the first 3 budget amendments are in compliance with the grant application. The other budget amendments before you are a combination of the general purpose fund and federal projects. It's not uncommon at the end of the year to do what we call cleanup budget amendments. And especially in our consolidated federal projects, our title, IDEA, and preschool. And this year, in addition to those federal projects, we have our ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 grants. And part of you'll also have a 3-page cleanup in the general purpose fund, and it's quite a few accounts, and again that has to do with the side-by-side budgeting of ESSERs 1 and 2 and the general purpose fund. So many of those ESSER CARES related expenditures could actually reimburse the general purpose fund, so we're seeing a lot of that this year that we normally don't see. So I don't anticipate in the next few years having this many budget amendments at year end. So again, we have cleanup amendments in federal, general purpose, and we do have a new revenue source this year that we weren't going to take, but we decided to do that, and that is indirect cost. We had talked about it for our next budget year. Funds were available in our ESSER 1, so we did budget indirect cost in the general purpose fund, and that is an allowable expense in ESSER 1. So if you have any questions on these budget amendments, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Ballard?
Are you a little worried that once all of I'll borrow the mayor's term, Biden bucks go away? Are you worried that we're going to be trying to scrap around and figure out how to carry forward with these projects?
I am so grateful to have these funds in order to stabilize the general purpose fund. So I really think in the next 2 to 3 years, with the use of these funds, we'll have a more stable general purpose fund. So that, yes, I am hopeful and optimistic, very hopeful and optimistic.
Thank you.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Do you believe these transfers to be reasonable and necessary?
Yes, I do, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Settle?
Mr. Chairman, I think when we had our retreat a few weeks ago, we talked about ESSER 1 and 2 and all those, and I believe that Mr. Duke made some statements to the effect of when these run out and how you guys have structured them so that when we do get to the end of ESSER funds, we are hopeful and more than hopeful that we will have, I don't know, was it growth dollars or something that's going to come in and that will actually balance it out. Am I correct?
Yeah, so what this will do and what we're trying to be really cautious about is because our enrollment has been off last year, we don't know what next year will look like. This will really get us to we have a stable enrollment and we will be better able to predict what we're going to get every year. So to go back to Mr. Ballard's question, we are being very conservative with this fund to make sure we are not setting ourselves up for the funds leaving and us being in a position where we really depended on that.
Right, because I noticed in a lot of the funding, like we talked about nurses stations, these are one-time things.
Yes.
We're not going to have to build one of these every year.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
I have one other.
Mr. Ballard?
Thank you, sir. In the financial highlights that accompanied the paperwork for the budget transfers,
Yes.
the last bullet point on revenues is discussing MCS students to Rutherford County students decreased from 15.08% in FY20 to 14.6% in FY21, resulting in an estimated penalty cost of $1 million. Can you somehow explain that to me?
Yes, it is. Because we have two school districts in the county, Murfreesboro City Schools and Rutherford County Schools, the State Department of Education calculates every year what they call a weighted FTE for our average daily attendance. It's recalculated on an annual basis, so it will fluctuate, and this is within the reasonable limits of the fluctuation. It's a proportionate share of the total dollars, and these are just for the local county shared dollars. It's a different calculation from the student calculation from the BEP funding formula that is actually based on attendance, enrollment. So the number before you, and I'm so glad you noticed that bullet, that was going to be my next point of conversation. The number before you is based on actual attendance. These are student calculations, actual students who attend school on during those first 3 reporting periods of the year. So there is a difference between the enrollment numbers and the average daily attendance. And this is calculated, that weighted average shared dollars is calculated on the average daily attendance. And it is only for the local revenues, such as we have several different property taxes, but it's the property taxes, it's the local option of the sales tax, it's business tax. So all of those are shared proportionately with Rutherford County Schools. So there is a dip. The dip this year, that slight decrease, and in the notation, I said it was about $1 million adjustment, a downward adjustment. I spoke with Ms. Bratcher, Julie Bratcher, who's the deputy trustee in Rutherford County. I spoke with her today. We've had several conversations since these numbers came out to recalculate and adjust these dollars that go back to the beginning of this fiscal year. And it's about $890,000 once we settled on a dollar amount and looked at these percentages. So it's about an $890,000 decrease based on what we thought we were going to get. We're going to use that term cleanup again. This is an adjustment that had we had these numbers at the beginning of the year, this is how they would have shared that revenue from the very beginning.
I do want to emphasize one thing Ms. Williams said there, in that we actually went back when we got this and looked kind of historically what we had seen with that number, and she did speak and she mentioned it. You do see kind of year over year, because it's not based on enrollment, but on who actually comes to school every day, the attendance portion of it, it's not uncommon for it to move a little above 15, a little above 15, kind of bounce back and forth. And considering the attendance issues this year, specifically around COVID, it was not surprising for us to see that number.
Yes, thank you. So that was a very long answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm trying to sort it out. Thank you, though. Yeah, I think I understand a bit more. Basically, attendance goes up, the dollar differential goes down to our favor, right?
It goes up.
It goes up.
So here's what's important. What's important is that we have our kids in.
Our money goes up.
Yeah.
Attendance
That we have our kids in
Get
school
everybody
every
in.
day.
Get
So, and when we say, you know, we've talked a long time about everyday matters in Murfreesboro City, and it really does
Yeah.
for so many reasons. But to clarify that, membership enrollment is what drives our state funding. The actual daily attendance is what drives how we share those funds with Rutherford County.
Gotcha.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Personnel report?
You have the personnel report in front of you, and we are happy to answer any questions you have regarding that.
Are we still in the hiring process for next school year, or have we got pretty much what we need?
Yeah, we are still in the hiring process, and I'll let Mr. Ringstaff discuss that further.
Mr. Chairman, a point of order. Before that occurs, we did not vote on the budget amendments, the cleanups.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I move that we approve those
All
budget
right, sir,
amendments.
thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Ms. Moore, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition, and there is none. Thank you, sir. All right,
Thank
Mr.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Ringstaff.
Yes, we're still in the hiring process. We have about 8 certified positions that are posted. We have a couple 6th grade teachers, of course, 2 or 3. Couple our upper grade positions, 4th, 5th, and 6th. We need some more teachers. And we're going to start hiring for interim teachers after that, and we'll talk about that in the July board meeting further.
You have any idea how many new people we have hired already?
We've hired about 74 teachers already, and we will probably hire around 6 to 8 more. We'll have about 80 to 82.
Okay, thank you. All right, we don't need a motion to approve that report, though, do
No,
we?
sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Director's update?
I have a
Dr.
very
Duke?
Yes, I have a very brief update tonight. Before I know we have a special called meeting after this, so I'll keep it short. But I did want to take a moment to recognize our very own Miss Elizabeth Taylor. If you did not know, this past week she was selected to participate in the 2020 Tennessee Bar Association Leadership Law class. The Leadership Law program aims to serve the legal profession by equipping participants with the vision, knowledge, and skills necessary to serve leaders in the profession and the community as a whole. Well, this past Friday, Ms. Taylor was awarded the Larry D. Wilkes Leadership Award from the Tennessee Bar Association Leadership Law. This award is chosen by the class in recognition of exceptional leadership qualities that enhance the leadership law experience for all class members, and her name will be included on a very large trophy. You can show you the picture. That will be housed at the Tennessee Bar Association. So we are just so proud of Ms. Taylor and, of course, the work she does.
So then this award that your name's going to go on this trophy was awarded to you by the class.
Yes, they voted for me.
So your peers voted for you. That's
They
even
did.
better.
Yeah.
That's
A
even
group
better.
of
And I will
leaders
say
that were
That's like
selected to
being
go to the
teacher of
school.
year.
Yes, and I will say that people in the program she's talking about, T-Wall, are fantastic, and they're the promising leaders of the Bar Association in the future. So for them to pick Elizabeth is
Thank
really
you very much.
high praise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great report, Dr. Duke. Anything else?
That's it for me, sir.
So
All
you're
right.
going to include a picture of that when you come up for review with the city as far as your income and everything?
Mr. Tyndall is well aware of the award.
Okay, all right.
All right. Well, thank you, board, for our first meeting of the night. I will remind you that we do have a closed session meeting coming immediately following this one. So without any further ado, do we have a motion to adjourn the 6 o'clock meeting?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Mr. Richardson, second by Mr. Settles. All in favor, keep your seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.